This is the Blood Red Podcast from the Liverpool Echo.
It's the Blood Red Podcast, courtesy of the Liverpool Echo. I'm Guy Clarke. Welcome along. The Red slump continues. Records falling, but not the kind the Reds want reminding about. A first derby defeat since 2010, a first at Anfield this century, and Liverpool losing 4 consecutive home matches for the first time since 1923. Alongside me to reflect on what went wrong in the derby and how Liverpool get back on track, we've our chief Liverpool writer, Ian Doyle, Theo, Squires and Marcus Banks. Doyle, I'll come to you first. It said that bad habits are like a comfortable bed, easy to get into but hard to get out of. So how do Liverpool awake from this slumber?
Well, the reality is that they don't. I think we have to admit that it's a bit of a problem for Liverpool. And if you look at what's gone wrong for them, there isn't an obvious way out, to be honest. I mean, we've got there's the story been breaking today that Diogo Jota is going to be hopefully back in training on Wednesday, which will at least give them a little more options up front. Possibly not for the Sheffield United game on Sunday, but then Jordan Henderson, he's the latest to go into the injury room. It means that Liverpool have now got the 5 main centre backs who played this season. They're all injured, so it's difficult to know what Klopp can do. I mean, he said, didn't he? It was quite funny. He did an interview with the official website after the game on Saturday, and he started talking about we played some good football, but then he kind of caught himself halfway through and went, "Look, I'm fed up hearing myself saying this. I'm fed up hearing it," because he knows that I thought Liverpool played okay for about an hour against Everton, but they gave them the goal at the beginning, they gave them the penalty at the end, and in between they couldn't find a way through. I mean, Jordan Pickford had, what was it, two good, decent saves to make. One was brave, one was actually a good stop. But even the one that was a good stop was a 25-yard volley, which you can never really count as a chance. So I think Liverpool just have to keep on doing what they've been doing. And we're going to have to accept that this season, they can't write this season off, because looking forward or looking to the future, next season, you'd like to hope that things are getting a bit more back to normal. They'd want to be in the Champions League, but it's going to be very, very hard for them now to get into that top 4, because they're not going to catch City. They're not going to catch probably now Leicester or United, unless something goes wrong. Unless United actually get some injuries for once. Can't see them catching them, which means that there's a couple of teams looking for this 4th spot. I don't think West Ham will do it. I think it's possibly between Liverpool and Chelsea. You might say Everton too, but Chelsea are in the box seat in terms of that. Even if they're 2 points behind West Ham, I think Liverpool. There's still 13 games to go, so it's more than It's more than a third of the season to go, and I think people have to remember that. But it's going to take something special for them to get into that top 4, and with the amount of players that they've got missing in the key areas of centre back and defensive midfield, you do wonder whether they've got it in them to do that, and I'd be very surprised if they have.
Theo, is one of the real sort of concerns, issues, worries, sort of how the rot's really set in at Anfield now. No win, I think it's 5 games, isn't it, since going back to the West Brom game, and certainly 4 of those. It feels like you're watching the same game every time.
Yeah, watching Liverpool at the moment, you don't know when they're going to score. It doesn't feel like they're going to score. For so long, there's been confidence in them that it doesn't matter what the scoreline is with 5 minutes to go. If they're losing, if they're drawing, they would find a way to win the game. It's why they won the Premier League last year. They made this habit out of winning games by the odd goal, grinding it out. And now it's like the complete reverse. Jurgen Klopp, when he took over, it was to turn doubters into believers. Well, now they've lost all that belief. If they don't score first or don't score early, you can just feel them going, here we go again. And you never think they're going to turn it on. It's like, you can't put it down to just losing a couple of players from injury. Something has changed in their mentality. And they're really struggling across the board. Like they've lost their leaders. Like now, Jordan Henderson, we're expecting him to be out for a while. So that's no Van Dijk, no Milner for however long, no Henderson. It's like, well, what can they do to kickstart this around? Someone needs to grab it by the scruff of the neck and lead by example. And this is why Liverpool would not have to be in this situation. It's a call back to a few years ago under the early years of FSG, when they were struggling in games, when they were uninspired, they didn't have these world-class players. And it's just a lot more alarming now when, on paper, they've got a great squad and they've still got the Premier League champions in these ranks. Like, why the front three suddenly struggling to break down defences? How come they've signed a £25 million playmaker in Thiago Alcantara, who we all admit is one of the best midfielders on the world, and it's not happening for them? Why have the fullbacks gone from getting 15, 20 assists each season to not being able to do anything? it's just at loss for words at how it's all fallen apart. You'd say it shouldn't have been weakening the midfield. Like, if they need to get Henderson or Firmino back in midfield, like, it's one thing admitting your defence is going to be a lot weaker without Van Dijk, but making the second part of your team that much weaker as well by putting your centre midfielders at centre back, it's a stupid decision. But it's easy to say that in hindsight now. And now they don't have those midfielders anyway. So it's like they're running out of options, and just something needs to give. And the more it goes on, the more belief they lose. And they just don't feel like they can turn it around at the moment.
No, it does sort of have that ominous feel right now, doesn't it, Marcus? And Doyle, speaking about where Liverpool are in the table in relation to those chasing Champions League football, we said a few weeks back the title was gone, then maybe second was best. But are we looking at fourth being best case scenario now for Liverpool?
Yeah, I think it is, and it's obviously got huge consequences if Liverpool don't finish fourth. They've handed out big contracts, and big contracts are still, you'd assume, are in the work. You've got Salah's contract running down. There's obviously talk about extending Van Dijk's deal too, and finishing in the top four is crucial to keeping the best players at the club, which has been FSG's main aim really over the last few years. And a lack of Champions League football, the revenue that comes with that would be obviously a massive dent to the clubs and the owners' plans, and that ties into transfers too. A lot of people have been saying, is it time to freshen up the front three? Is it time for one of the three to go? And it comes back to, would anyone, the problem that Liverpool managers in the past have faced of, would people want to come without Champions League football? There's obviously talk of Kylian Mbappe, which is probably not feasible from a financial point of view, and then Erling Haaland's obviously a name that is linked with every club now, but these types of players just aren't going to come without Champions League football. So I think fourth has to be the target. Obviously, they're still in the Champions League, and knockout football might favour Liverpool, and that is obviously another route into the Champions League. Obviously, it would be a big ask to go through and win it, but I think fourth has to be the main aim over the coming weeks. Obviously, the title's gone. Probably the place, as Doyle said, the places underneath second and third are probably gone as well. So I think fourth has to be the aim, and I think they should probably just put all their eggs in the Champions League basket as well, and hope for a favourable run. See if they can pull out a performance like Leipzig in the later rounds.
Yeah, Doyle, 2 wins in the last 11 since Christmas, from which Liverpool have fallen from top spot and only taken 9 points in that time. Only Southampton, Newcastle and West Brom have got fewer points, than Liverpool in that time. And of course, Liverpool have dropped points against all three of those themselves. Is this now, are we at rock bottom for this season for Liverpool, do you think?
Well, I suppose from the position in the table, then, yeah. I must admit that I'm not massively alarmed by what's happening, simply because we know exactly what's happened. It would be more weird if all of this was happening and everybody was playing. Then you'd be like, well, what on earth has happened to the team here? You can just go through every single injury one by one and explain. Theo mentioned the fullbacks. The reason that the fullbacks are playing like that is because they don't have centre-backs alongside them that can come across and cover. They haven't played with them often enough. And then they haven't got the defensive midfielders that can drop in when they go forward, because Firmino and Henderson aren't there. They've been playing centre-back. So it just goes round and round and round in circles. It keeps on coming back to the injuries, and there's nothing really you can do about some of those. Basically, everything that Jurgen Klopp said at the start of the season in terms of it being a tough campaign, there's going to be this, that and the other, has come true. And this is why he wanted 5 substitutes. That's long gone. And he probably wanted it more than anybody else, almost as much as anybody else, because he knew what would happen to his team, because he knows the way that Liverpool play. And, you know, we're going to go on about, probably a bit later on, about the front three and this, that and the other, and why aren't they performing? Well, Mohamed Salah is the top scorer in the Premier League, so he's doing okay. And I know some of them might be penalties, but he's scoring a lot of goals that aren't penalties. Firmino's playing in a team that's not set up to be, you know, to make the most of his qualities, which is what, if you look at when he first joined Liverpool, he was playing out on the wing, wasn't he? Under Brendan Rodgers, didn't really do anything. Then Klopp comes in, builds a team kind of around him that plays to his strengths, and look, he ends up being such a, an important part of where, when he doesn't play, people say that Liverpool don't perform as well as they should do, but it's a completely different Liverpool team now, which is another reason why Thiago hasn't done as well as perhaps he should do, because he was bought to play in a Liverpool team that now is not the Liverpool team that he was expecting because of all the players that are missing. So there's a reason for all of it. I'd be more alarmed if these things were happening and we were like, well, Why is that? I can't explain it, but it's easily explainable. The worst thing for Liverpool is that there's nothing they can do about almost any of it. Most of these players aren't coming back. They've obviously brought in 2 centre-backs. One of them hasn't kicked a ball. The other one, and I think I know I do the ratings and giving him 5 and 2 of his 3 games, but I can only judge it from how I see it in the way he's playing. But he's a 20-year-old lad. He'll be playing at the bottom of the Bundesliga and been asked to come into a Liverpool team with all of their centre-backs out and then said, come on, turn our season around. That's a massive ask. Although it did look as though he'd never played in wind before, I have to say, during the Everton game, which, given the fact that he's going to play most of his games at Anfield and he's going to be training most of the time at Kirkby, is a bit of an issue because they are 2 of the windiest places in Merseyside. So I think I would like to also take up on what Marcus just said about the Champions League qualification. I don't necessarily think that makes any difference in terms of players wanting to come, because I think next season there will be, we're rather open, the fans will be back in, and people still, the clubs still sell themselves on the Anfield experience. And we've said this a million times, they've been missing that this season. They're not the only team that's, Sheffield United, they're another team who have missed their fans probably more than even Liverpool, to be honest, given how well they did last season, the season before. So I think players will still want to come to Liverpool. And in terms of wanting to get rid of or sell one of the front 3, who's going to buy him? Who's got the money? No one's got any money. And this is another issue for players who are going to be moving around. So I don't think everything's going to be as straightforward as perhaps it would have been 1 year, 2 years ago if Liverpool were in this position.
No, I'm with you, Doyley, there on Liverpool selling themselves. I mean, United, for example, bought Paul Pogba when they were out of the Champions League. So it can be done. I don't think it is the be-all and end-all, albeit for some of those mega stars. It definitely is. But Theo, picking up on the theme Doyley said there about the injuries, Jamie Carragher maybe emotionally said during the derby on commentary on Sky Sports, the injury excuse can only go on for so long. It shouldn't be sort of a reason why things are quite this bad, but they're long-term injuries. So it's going to be a long-term effect on Liverpool, isn't it?
Yeah, I saw a tweet over the weekend. I think it was about Manchester City's injury problems last year. I think it was the most they ever had out for once was 6 players for 1 game. Liverpool have had at least 6 out for like 22 games out of the 25 now. And it is the spine of their team. And as Doyle elaborated there, it does have that knock-on effect across the board. Like if you don't have, say, Fabinho or Henderson in front of the back 4, then the defence don't have that protection and the fullbacks can't get forward as much. The forwards, they're doing it on their own because they don't have Trent and Robertson right up there alongside them. And it's just like, it becomes tiring, doesn't it, for the rest of the squad? When you lose those players, you lose those leadership, and you're playing so many games, you're going to be fatigued anyway. And you don't have a Jordan Henderson screaming at you to get it together. You don't have Virgil van Dijk heading everything away or clearing up any little mistake you make. It's just falling apart, and they're feeling the strain. It would be hard for any team. If you went through any team in the Premier League and said, right, I'm taking out X, Y, and Z, and then for a little bit you're going to miss A and B, and that's going to be for half your games, how would any of them cope? Yes, it's a tired excuse now, but it's a tired excuse because it has been a season-long issue. Normally, teams have long-term injuries, and it's a month, 2 months. It goes longer for a couple of players. Not half your team now. Like Henderson could easily be out for the rest of the season. Fabinho's had a couple of layoffs where it's been, a month at a time. We know Van Dijk, we know Gomez, we know Matip. It's just the only surprise is that it hasn't struck any of the front 3 yet. Yet the one out of them who looked most in form when he was coming in was Diogo Jota, and it feels so long since we last seen him play. And it doesn't help with the fixture list because the games are coming so frequently. It feels even longer without them. It's just, well, what can Liverpool do? Like Jota might be back, but that doesn't mean it's going to sort out the defence or the midfield. It doesn't mean they're going to start creating chances that they haven't been in the last few weeks. You've just got to hope that they can find somewhere to get this life back into the team. And it's going to be so much harder without Henderson because they've shown this season how much more they need that leadership, and it's not there now.
Yeah, on losing another leader, Marcus, at the beginning of last season, what was it? The 4-man leadership group of Virgil van Dijk, Jordan Henderson, James Milner and Gini Wijnaldum. Well, 3 of those are now injured. Gini Wijnaldum's contract is ticking down. I suppose even more important than ever, even last season, to have as many of those leaders on the pitch at once to sort of energise the team with no crowd in. And, well, as I say, 3 of them now injured. That Jordan Henderson injury coming at the worst possible time.
Yeah, and as Theo mentioned there, the injuries really have ripped that spine out of the Liverpool team. You look at the impact that Van Dijk had when he came in. You could see it from the first game that he raised the performances of everyone. You look at the impact of Ruben Diaz at Man City. That's one world-class defender in that Man City defence, and he's completely changed their fortunes at the back. Their defensive records has been impeccable. You look at John Stones' performance; he has lifted Stones to keep an Aymeric Laporte out the season, who everyone last season used that as a main excuse for City not challenging Liverpool. But people forget that he was back in January anyway. It's not like Van Dijk who's out for the season, Gomez out for the season, Matip out for the season. The impact of having those leaders, those key players in key areas of the pitch it has a domino effect for the rest of the team. And I think it's just the recent performances have given teams a blueprint of how to expose this Liverpool team. They're struggling against the low block, and that defensive fragility is on show. That if they get one or two chances, teams are scoring. The worst thing Liverpool could have done against Everton was concede early, because it just gave Everton everything they needed to follow that blueprint of just sit back. Liverpool have struggled against the low block, and then on the counter they don't have the defenders and then the midfielders to stop that counter attack, and it's been more of the same really, and I don't see it changing really, especially with Henderson being out. Kabak, probably Nat Phillips gets a run in the team. You've got to look at Ben Davies. Does he ever go? And where does Firmino come in? Does he slot back into midfield because Liverpool desperately need him in there, or does he go back into that back four? And Liverpool have got to continue playing with. If Keita's fit, it's probably got to be Jones, Thiago, and Gini, because Milner's out, Henderson out. Klopp's so limited in his options that I don't see it getting any better.
No, it does look as though he's going to be a while.
Marcus, thanks.
Yeah, that really cheered that really cheery tone. Before we move on from the derby, let's talk about refereeing. We saw the issue at Leicester last week. Mane given a nudge ball over the top and led to Leicester's second. But quick one on the penalty. Everyone, I'm sure, listening in will be screaming. However, they are listening in thinking they've not even spoken about the penalty. Doyley, what did you think?
Who cares? Who cares? I mean, let's be honest. I mean, obviously, being there straight away in the run of the game, it was straight away, that's a penalty. He's quite clearly just brought him down because he was going to score. Then you saw the replay, and then most of the people I was sat around were like, hang on, that's not a penalty. He's fallen over into it. But there's no way the referee was going to change his mind. So just one of those things. I think Liverpool got used to it. I would also like to point out that if you want a comparison for Liverpool's injuries, just for the sake of it, it was the equivalent of Everton starting the game without Godfrey, Mina, Keane and Holgate, and playing with Allen at the back, and then he gets injured as well, and they alongside a lad they've just brought in, and somebody like, and I know he's on loan somewhere else, but Matty Pennington playing at centre back as well, which has happened in the past, and Everton have lost derbies. So it's just putting into context for all the loads of Everton fans who will be listening to this podcast and wanting to know what kind of impact it would have had on their team. But what was the question? The penalty,
Just
right.
Was it a penalty?
Yeah,
I was just going to ask everyone if they thought it was a penalty.
It's just like, I would like to point out, I know Marcus is very, very downbeat there about the way things are going to go for the rest of the season, and he's right, they will do. But I can tell you this now, if these teams try this against Liverpool next season, they're going to get absolutely battered, because Liverpool, even if they get half of their players back, they'll be much better. And the other thing is the crowds will be back in. And I've been saying this for almost the entire time they've been back playing. And I know Guy, I've said this about Arsenal, is the fact that when they won the FA Cup last season playing that way, they'd never get away with that, playing that at home, because the fans will be on them saying, what are you doing? You can't just play defensively. They won't be able to do it. And I think it's no coincidence for me that if you go through every single team, they've got some kind of crazy record, either for or against this season. I don't need to go through them all. We know Liverpool's. Everton have got some. United, City on like how many games have they won in a row? Yet they got beat 5-2 by Leicester. All that kind of stuff. It's just a very strange season. And I think next season will be more like the previous seasons. And I think it may end up being a bit of a surprise for one or two, because given how far Liverpool have fallen, I think next season they'll be right up there again, no matter who's playing for them.
Yeah,
when you started
too downbeat, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
I don't want to be too downbeat, but as Doyle was saying, I do agree, and I think this season is just a bit of a write-off for me personally. I just think like the penalty decision alone, you look at it, it goes over to the VAR, you just sort of knew he's not going to overturn that, and it wouldn't surprise me if he did send them off or something like that, especially after the Derby incident and the countless VAR decisions that you're not even hopeful are going to go Liverpool's way this season. On top of that, with the injuries, you just think, for me, this season is a write-off, and as Doyle said, I don't think if teams think that this is going to be the same Liverpool next season, then they have got another thing coming. I think, obviously, the defence being settled, but I think people are going to see the true side of Thiago. I know Klopp mentioned that he's going to come in and bring a different dynamic to Liverpool, but he's not been able to do that. He's not playing in the team he was signed to play in for. And I think with a fully fit defence with Fabinho behind him, you're going to see Thiago splitting the lines and the true Liverpool that he was signed to play for.
Yeah, definitely. Doyle, as you started saying there again about Liverpool won't be sort of like this next season, I was going to say, I know I wear the silly headset, but I thought you were going to go full Kevin Keegan for a moment.
I would love it.
Yeah. Theo, just before we move on, one word, penalty or not?
Oh, so you want me to answer your question, not the one that Doyle answered? Yeah, on the penalty. It's one where at the time I saw it and I thought, I don't think it is. What can he do? It looks like Calvert-Lewin's going down anyway, but then it's one where you look at the rules and it's like, well, that is a penalty in this game now, and it's one where you can see any incident and you know it's going to go VAR monitor, and you don't know which way the referee's going to give it. Any decision can be changed on a different day. As we saw the David Luiz one a couple of weeks ago, he got sent off for that. The officials are saying yesterday, that Trent could have been sent off, and like they would have been outraged for that. But if you go in letter of the law, it's probably the correct decision, and just shows that there is something wrong with the laws and there is something wrong with VAR and the way it's used, because it's taken the fun out of the game. There's no common sense to it now, and it's just not enjoyable. Like we saw it against Leicester, didn't we? With offsides at the tightest of margins, and it's like, what are you judging as offside? What aren't you judging as offside? And now for decisions like that, Trent can't move out the way. Calvert-Lewin can only go on that one path to him, but if you're running into him, you know you're going to go down. It's just, doesn't really make sense. It's the correct decision, but something needs to change.
That's what made the Champions League that much fun to watch. Like the other day, because there was none of this VAR nonsense. They just got on with it. I mean, they were checking, but they were just doing it straight away. And it wasn't just Liverpool. It was the other games. They take way too long, don't they? I mean, perhaps it's just the officials in England aren't particularly good. Let's be honest.
Yeah, you don't hear it in like France, Italy, or Spain, do you, when they're using VAR? It's like, another big incident. Well, they'll be talking about this penalty one all over the world, won't they? So you just don't get it overseas, and they're using VAR a lot longer than in the Premier League, and they seem to be doing it right, because we certainly aren't.
I know, and then you got something like Harry Maguire where he tries to take off Lascelles' head against Newcastle, which wasn't particularly clever, but it's not given. I think just a bit of consistency. The only thing that they're consistent is consistently terrible.
Yeah, definitely. If you want to discuss the laws of the game, at Theo Squires echoes your best place to do that.
Top of our side to that, mate.
Matt's the one for it. Matt Addison's the one for the laws of the game.
Matt is actually qualified referee. Matt Addison. Yeah, so he is the guy to take it up with. But anyway, let's move on from the derby. Let's talk about moving forward for Liverpool. Doyle, you sort of hinted at it before. One guy who's come in for a fair bit of flack is Roberto Firmino. I know you've said all through this season that Liverpool were playing a bit of a risky game, even going into the season with the same front three. Has Klopp been too loyal to these guys, or is it a bit unfair that Roberto Firmino's coming in for so much flack right now?
Well, it's not unfair. He's not been too loyal. He's just had to be, hasn't he? Because Jota's been out. You saw that when Jota was available, he was playing. He was either coming on quite early on, or he was starting matches. So, I don't think it's so much that. I think it's more, Minamino possibly hasn't quite. And I know he scored the 2 goals for Southampton, but what a surprise. He's suddenly playing for a team that isn't playing against teams that are completely set up defensively against him. So he's suddenly getting spaces and he's getting goals, which he was never getting at Liverpool. Origi's just not quite done it. I mean, the problem Liverpool have had is that you look at Werner, and I know he's not been done particularly well at Chelsea, but there's no guarantee that would have happened at Liverpool. But there are players who've thought, I don't want to go to Liverpool because I know I'm not going to be playing. Certainly from number 9s, because they know Firmino's been that important for the way Liverpool play. And he, as I said before, when he plays normally, Liverpool play well. So it's just that Firmino's never been a scorer, hasn't he? He's always been somebody who facilitates the others. He does get the odd goal, and they tend to be quite good goals. But what Liverpool need at the moment is someone up there who could, and a normal old style number 9, just get on the end of these crosses, across the area. Just barge your way through. And they don't have that. I mean, they probably thought Origi could be somebody like that, but it's quite clear that his star's fallen quite a lot. And other than that, then you're looking down. Even if you're looking in like the under-23s, someone like Paul Glatzel, he's injured or he has been injured. And then who's underneath that? Then you got Leighton Stewart, who only scored his first goal for the under-23s at the weekend. So, a bit of a big ask for them. But with Jota coming back, I think he's somebody who will certainly, the minute that he gets fit, he'll be in and around that front three, and he'll be playing most of the games because above anything else, it can give one of the other three a rest.
No, definitely. And Marcus, sort of looking at that, Salah's obviously continued to score goals. He's just an output machine. But Firmino is 1 goal in his last 11. He's got 2 assists in that time, albeit one of those came off the bench. But Sadio Mane's been struggling as well. Only 1 goal in 8 games for him and only 3 in the last 18. It does feel as though at least one of those needs a rest. And Diogo Jota, hopefully, back in full training this week and not too long before he's back out on the pitch for the Reds.
Yeah, I think Jota's return is obviously going to be huge, and especially for the rest of the season. But I do think that his goals early in the season were papering over the cracks a little bit. I think, especially, but that is obviously as a result of the injuries. But I think Liverpool are getting to that point now where they need to try something different. I think obviously Klopp's tried and tested with the 4-3-3, and it's had massive success. But I think if teams are going to continue to play in this low block, then Jota's return could, give them a rest. But I think Jota needs to come in and play with that front three in that 4-2-3-1 shape that we've seen at times. Maybe moving Salah to the centre, dropping Firmino a little bit deeper because he is struggling. I think he's been out of form for a while, but he is the one who's struggling most against this low block. He works best in space, and obviously he's got 0. Salah's probably in the form of his career. He's still managing to score goals, and I think shifting probably Mane back over to the right just to try something different, putting Jota on the left of the 3 with Firmino in the hole and Salah going as a central forward. I think that's something that Klopp should look at in the next few weeks, just to try something different, because the form is dreadful, and they just need to mix it up, because teams now, I've mentioned before, they have that blueprint, that low block. The teams are just setting up defensively, and nothing's going to change because everyone's looking at the same way, looking at Everton, looking at the games that Liverpool have lost at home. Teams are going to continue to set up in that way. So I think adding an extra attacker with someone as clinical as Jota on either foot, I think that could be key to seeing the goals flowing, and if they spread the goals out amongst them, I think confidence is going to be boosted, and hopefully it can turn fortunes for Liverpool.
No, definitely. Theo, what's your take on sort of the issues at the top end of the pitch? Firmino, he had a couple of chances against Everton. The first half, it seemed as though there was one he could have taken first time, but tried to get a touch in there first, and second half, of course, had another couple of efforts. Never really looked like he was going to score.
It's a confidence thing with Firmino. I think fans judge him pretty much on 17-18 when he got, over 20 goals, and he was scoring goals. But that's when defences were higher up, when Liverpool were this unknown quantity. You didn't know just how good the front 3 are. And then you still got, Sadio Mane and Mohamed Salah will tell you they wouldn't score as much if Roberto Firmino wasn't on the pitch. It's just the whole Liverpool setup at the moment. It's not as effective. Firmino is a scorer of big goals, and you can normally overlook it and forgive it when other players are scoring, when the team are doing well. It's happened before with Liverpool. Like you think with Dirk Kuyt, he always stood up and was counted when the team needed him. But he was a big money signing at the time who didn't get the goals consistently year after year. He was just fortunate because he had like Fernando Torres, Steven Gerrard to do it. And Liverpool are normally okay because Salah will get them goals, Mane will get them goals. And for the whole time, they haven't had to worry about dropping points because they'd normally get the results. And there's just more scrutiny on him now because they're not getting the results. If you want to judge him on performances, it's probably since he missed the end of the Champions League winning season. Yeah, he came back for the final, but he's been inconsistent since then. But he's not the only one. Like, if you look at the Premier League scoring charts this season and compare it to last season, how many of the big names from last year are actually having good seasons, scoring lots of goals? Like Vardy, he's had a few injuries. He's done all right. He's not been exceptional. He's one of the better ones, though. Aubameyang's not done it. Ings hasn't got as many. Sterling's not got as many. Jimenez is missing in action from his injury. Martial, Rashford, Aguero, Abraham. Mohamed Salah and Son are pretty much the only two that are doing it consistently after last year. So it's not just the Liverpool and Roberto Firmino issue. It's across the whole division because teams are against all the top teams are defending deeper because they don't have the fans putting the pressure on them. And it's just because Liverpool are the reigning Premier League champions. They dominated so emphatically last year. And it's such a contrast from what we've seen from the last 2-3 seasons that there's more pressure on the players there because they're not getting the results and because they've got such a lengthy injury list.
I think the thing about Firmino as well is that it only seems to be at home. If you look at Liverpool's last 5 away games, against Leipzig, he pressured Sabitzer into doing that pass back from when he scored the opener. Against Leicester, he does that great assist for Salah for his goal. Against West Ham, he comes off the bench and sets up the goal for Wijnaldum. Against Tottenham, he scored, didn't he, the opening goal from where the kind of goal that we wish we could score more often from about 1 yard out, and he had a very good game. And against United in the FA Cup, he set up 2 goals for Salah. So he's doing quite well away from home. It's just at home, which is where we come back to. That's where teams are more inclined just to put everybody behind the ball, and he hasn't got the space in which he can operate, which is why Liverpool need, they haven't got the option of this kind of other forwards, which is why they need Jota back as soon as possible.
Is it though? Maybe I'm pretty sure I'm going to get hit down here. Saw in the second half against Everton, Mane went through the middle for a bit, and Firmino sort of dropped off towards the left. Is it time, Doyle? I'll ask you to actually give Origi a bit of a run of games because he comes in every so often. We judge him straight away, and he never seems to do much. But surely he needs a run, doesn't he?
I think. Am I right in saying that he's actually featured in 8 of the last 11 games? I wrote something like this. I think that was the stat. It's something like that. He started against Burnley, and he started at West Ham. And I thought, obviously, Burnley missed that chance, which he basically did everything but score. Then,
yeah.
Against West Ham, I thought he did all right actually, till he had to go off. I think he offered a little bit more, but Liverpool played 4-4-2 that day. I think Liverpool have been slightly more varying the tactics than I think people think. And they did go 4-4-2 in the second half for a while against Everton, as you just mentioned. So I think they are trying these other things. The problem with Origi is that he needs the goal, doesn't he? He needs a goal. Yeah. And with Origi, in some ways, Origi might make sense playing him, partly because he's never really fitted in with Liverpool's plan under Klopp. He's always been like the wild card. He just goes on and does whatever he wants, but he's always does something different. So it's unpredictable, which is why he gets these big goals. So perhaps that's something, but you probably wouldn't want to rely on him to get the goals that's going to get Liverpool back up towards the top 4. So does he deserve a chance? I mean, to be honest, I actually think he plays against Sheffield United, which I know it's a long way away from that, but I think is exactly the kind of game where he can come in and do something.
Yeah, and occupy defenders. Marcus, what do you reckon? Do you reckon it's Divock time?
Not for me. I just think I don't think. I mean, he's an Anfield hero. No one can take away the goals he scored. But I honestly, if he didn't score that and have the impact off the bench, I think he would have been sold a long time ago. He just doesn't fit into this Liverpool team, and it's even small things I've noticed just from watching him when he comes in at the end of games. Sometimes he doesn't. He's the freshest player on the pitch, and he's just not breaking. He should be breaking his back, closing everyone down, like pressing like a machine. He's a tired player, and he is coming off the bench for 5 minutes, and he slopes, like runs about, doesn't really offer much. I don't think he's the answer. I think Jota coming back in, I'd even be inclined to potentially move Curtis Jones up to a number 10 for some games, and maybe give Naby Keita to try in the number 10 if he can get a run of games and improve his fitness. I think that's rather the best way to do something different rather than bringing Origi in.
Theo?
It's too late to ask this question when Jota's nearly back. It would have been the right time to ask it when he first got injured, when Liverpool needed those options. Like, you think if you're going to give Origi opportunity, you'd have done it on Saturday, wouldn't you? He needs a goal, but who does he always score against? Everton. For those home games when teams are defending deep, you want that striker who can bully them a bit. And if Origi gets one goal, then he'll go on a run. He'll get some form going. Like, we think about his best moments in his Liverpool career, it's been when he's had those sorts of runs. And maybe things would have been very different in the past month or two if he'd scored that chance against Burnley, that he didn't. It was a chance he should have buried, and he missed it, and Liverpool have just fallen apart even more since. He's not a top quality option, the same as the front three. That's what you hope Jota can be consistently. I think there's some quotes, weren't there, from Max Cruz over the weekend last week saying if Origi hadn't scored in the Champions League semi-final and the final, he was sold, he was gone. They'd agreed a deal to get Cruz in to replace him, and then Jurgen Klopp changed his mind quite rightly. But it feels like Origi's time's been and gone. He is a Liverpool hero, but when he has had the opportunities, he's just not done it. And it's not just this season when he's been in and out. He wasn't doing it last year either. If they wanted to try him and they wanted to do something different, Jurgen Klopp have already done it. This is when you look lacking of players and you're out of form, that's when you turn something new. It just seemed a bit desperate now as the last throw of the dice. He's not the answer, really, is he, long term? You know he's probably going to go in the summer.
Okay, no chance for a final swan song for him then.
Killed him. Totally killed
exactly.
him.
Yeah, don't worry, Divock. If you're listening, Divock, I would give you a go in the team. Mate.
That was just a verbal Funes Mori on him, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Right, in terms of looking at where Liverpool do go then, and Doyle, you said in the summer you still think Liverpool will have the pulling power. What is number one priority on Jurgen Klopp's shopping list? Is it a centre-half? We've briefly touched on Ozan Kabak. He's under audition. Is it a centre-half instead that Liverpool need to go and buy, or is a forward player the main priority?
Centre-half, a midfielder, a forward.
Yeah, but which one?
Who's
number one? What's number one?
All of them. There is no priority. It's. I know what you're trying to get me to say, and I'm not going to say it. But,
Erling Haaland. No,
I don't think that there isn't one priority. I mean, this goes back to what I was saying before. Who's going to sign all of these players? Hello to the cat, by the way, behind Marcus. What's he doing? Anyway. So yeah, I don't think
a cat.
Oh, it's oh hello. No, seriously, what is the cat doing now? Right.
She's a black cat,
okay.
so she does what she wants, to be honest.
Yeah. Right. Okay. No, I don't think there's going to be one priority. I think it will. As we said before, I don't think there's going to be as many moves as people think. This is why the whole Gini Wijnaldum contract thing is going to be interesting to see what happens. Barcelona aren't doing particularly well. Does he actually want to go there? Will they be able to afford his wages or anything like that? So we'll have to see what happens there. I think there will be some. There's always been an evolution. I think people forget Liverpool signed 3 players last summer. Problem is, they've been all injured for a long time, and one of them's barely played anyway. And then they've just signed another 2 players in January. Whether either of those 2 stay beyond the end of the season, I'm very much unsure. Obviously, with Ben Davies, you have to wait and see whether he actually gets a game at any point, see what he's like. I just think if you're looking at if you want to press me on a priority, I would imagine it's probably going to be a midfielder.
Right. Okay. Midfielder for Doyle. We got there eventually. Marcus, where's priority for you?
I think priority has to be striker. I think Van Dijk and Gomez coming back, if they can stay fit, then that's the 2 centre-backs sorted. Obviously, they definitely do need a more reliable backup for those 2, whether that's Kabak or someone else. But I think it's time to freshen up the front 3, and even if it's keeping the front 3, I think, like I was saying before, about that 4-2-3-1 shape that I think Liverpool can transition into. I think having that out-and-out number 9, someone who's just going to have one shot and score, I think that is who Liverpool need now, and that's probably the next step of the evolution, whether that's someone young, or I think obviously Haaland would be the player that everyone would want to sign. He would get into every team. I'm not sure whether Liverpool could have done it when he was at Salzburg. I think obviously United tried to go for him, but they've got him on the cheap, and I think he could be a statement sign. I don't think they would, but I think that would be a huge statement of intent signing a player of Haaland's quality, or I've seen quotes from Patson Daka this week. He's another player who stepped into the Haaland void at Salzburg, and scoring goals are fun. Liverpool obviously have a very good scouting reputation, and whether someone is already earmarked and shortlisted, and I mean the club are better placed to know what he wants and know who fits into Klopp's system. So I'm sure there'll be plenty of names who've already been scouted and watched. But I think striker should be the number one priority for me.
Patson Daka, of course, scored against Liverpool in pre-season, didn't he, for Salzburg in that game? Ryan Brewster as well. What could he have done if he hung around? Well, he's not done much for Sheffield United. But Theo, yourself, priority?
Well, Doyle said midfielder. Marcus said striker. What do you think I'm going to say?
Goalkeeper.
Goalkeeper, yeah.
It's got to be a centre-back for me. It's not as easy as Van Dijk's back, Gomez is back, everything is fine. Because Joe Gomez is notoriously a player who takes a long time to heal from injuries, to recover and get back to his best. We've seen that before. When he did his ACL, I think it was a good 6 months or so, something after he'd made his return, before you even got him anywhere near the Liverpool first team. He'd only made a couple of cup appearances under Klopp, and then it still took him like half a season to get going again. And we've seen it before with him, like when he got injured at Burnley, it took a while to come back from that. Joel Matip, we know, can't be relied on. It's just too many injuries now. You're missing him for half a season every season. He's a quality player when he's fit, and you can excuse it as a backup option. But what's the point of a backup option if he can't play? And then Virgil van Dijk, yes, we know he's an exceptional player. He's the best defender in the world, or at least he was before he injured his knee. We don't know how well he's going to recover, how quickly he's going to recover. Like we mentioned Manchester City, didn't we, earlier in the podcast, the fact that Laporte's not got anywhere near that starting 11 on form this year. Well, he could still be feeling his way back. It could be the long-term effects of it. And Van Dijk might need that bit of time too. You look at the other options. I think Nat Phillips, he's out of contract. It doesn't matter how well he plays. Jurgen Klopp not using him unless he absolutely has to. Says he's probably not going to still be around. Kabak doesn't look like the answer for me, but then it's probably too early to write off a 20-year-old.
You've killed basically everybody here, haven't you? Basically, you've just destroyed every single player for Liverpool.
I'm just saying they need a centre-back, Doyle. Which we've been saying for over a year now. They need a centre-back because otherwise they're going to potentially be in the same boat next year where Joe Gomez is injured again, Joel Matip's injured again, Kabak still can't cope with wind or whatever if they do sign him permanently. Ben Davis is, I don't know, still trying to get Celtic to call him again and say he should have gone there to finish second in Scotland rather than finish sixth in England.
He's destroying clubs. Honestly, he's on the rampage.
If you want to discuss Liverpool's squad or club stature or anything like that, at Theo Squires Echo on Twitter, you're based to do that, right?
What you're making a lockdown, Theo? What do you think of the government's roadmap? Go on, just go for it. Go for all of it.
Oh no, we'll save that for another podcast.
Special dropping soon. Yeah, no. Anyway, last thing before we leave. Then looking at Liverpool's season, and we're making jest of it being in ruins, but that's the state we find it in. Marcus, is it all now on the Champions League? Back to 2005, and Liverpool finish fifth and win the Champions League and get qualification like that?
I think I mentioned earlier, I think the Champions League, especially the knockout format, could help Liverpool, and Liverpool have obviously struggled against the low block. I don't think, and we've seen it through the Champions League run. We destroyed some massive teams, and I think the way the bigger teams tend to play, it's also the reason Bar City, Liverpool have tended to perform against the bigger teams in the Premier League this season, because they're not as willing to sit 11 men behind the ball. I don't think Leipzig are going to do that. They can't afford to. And then whoever we draw in the next round, if we do beat Leipzig, then they're not going to play the same way as well. And I think the two-legged knockout format could favour Liverpool, especially with getting the front three back in form, getting Firmino back to his best. So I mean, I don't know about any other Liverpool fans, but I'd swap Premier League win for the Champions League win at any time. So I think finishing fifth with the Champions League win will be fine for me, as long as we get the number 7.
Doyley, in terms of summoning the spirit of 2005, back then, Sami Hyypiä was sort of rotated in and out of the squad to make sure he was fit to be rolled out in big Champions League games and whatnot. I know Liverpool don't really have options to be able to do that, but should the Champions League now take priority, and what options Klopp does have, he should sort of look to ensure his best possible 11 are fit for those Champions League games?
If Liverpool win the Champions League this year, it'll be the equivalent of being 7-0 down to AC Milan in 2005 with 3 minutes to go. I just don't think they've got too many injuries. I think we have to be realistic. We have to be realistic. Well, you have to be realistic about it. Yeah. We don't need to go through all the injuries again. We know what's happened.
Yeah.
No team would be able to cope with that. And so why should Liverpool, even though they were literally like 18 months ago, 14 months ago, the best team in the world, and they were, we've said it before, everything that Liverpool's rivals would have wanted to go wrong for Liverpool over the past 9 months is exactly what's happened. So we shouldn't be surprised that they're struggling. And I'll go as far as, if they finish in the top 4, that will be the equivalent of probably as better achievement than reaching the Champions League final in 2018. That's how big a deal it would be. Because for the reasons we've said, obviously it would set them up for next season, but also because they would have to have won some massive games between now and the end of the season, where in the last 2 months it doesn't look like they could win any game, let alone against one of the main rivals like Chelsea or go into United and win and games like that. So funnily enough, I think Klopp wouldn't want to finish 5th. He wouldn't want to be in the Europa League or whatever on earth it's called next season. Theo can tell me what it is. So I would imagine he. What's the other one?
Europa League Conference. Europa League
Conference.
Conference. Could drop into that one.
Well, they'd rather not. So I think they'd rather finish fourth, and if they're not going to finish fourth, finish about eighth. So, and I actually think that's one of those two things will happen, and they won't win the Champions League. So there you go.
I think a lot of people after a derby defeat were probably hoping Blood Red was going to help lift spirits today.
Yeah, lifted spirits. It's been full of jokes and chat and cats. What more do they want?
Okay. Theo, what do you reckon? Champions League or bust, or what happen?
They're not going to do it just because when they won it in 2005, they were the underdogs, but you always fancied them on the day, like against Juventus, Chelsea, AC Milan. There was always that little bit of belief there. Maybe a Champions League run can inspire it, but at the moment it's hard to see it. If they do win it, of course, they qualify next season and it can be that get out for them. But then they had that, didn't they, when they got to the Europa League final a few years ago, they didn't win that and the season fell apart. Like they had to basically give up the league position to do that. And it was just a gamble that backfired. But now looking at it, it's probably the only way they can turn it around. It's like maybe Jurgen Klopp can get it on this way, because if we know the league games aren't happening for them, one-off games in Europe here and there where they're potentially not playing at Anfield and teams aren't as open to having to defend as deep, it can happen. But then if they got drawn against a Manchester City, an Atletico Madrid or whatever, is there belief that they can turn it on and beat them? I'm not so sure.
No, certainly. Well, that's it for us here then, this edition of the Blood Red podcast. Plenty of offerings coming up across the Blood Red channel through the course of the week on our dedicated YouTube channel and also the podcast feed. If you can leave us a rating or review wherever it is you listen to your audio on demand, that is always more than appreciated. And don't forget, at Theo Squires Echo on Twitter to get anything off your chest. He'll be more than willing to answer anything you want to put his way. But from myself, Guy Clarke, Ian Doyle, Marcus Banks, and Theo Squires, thanks for your time and your company. It's bye for now.
This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo.